Hey guys, welcome to the Player 3 podcast,
where we discuss our favorite topics.
From video games to philosophy.
where we argue over what's good and bad.
Degrade and rank each other.
And have a great time with friends. Enjoy! Hello, and welcome to the Player 3 Cup podcast. In today's episode, we are going to talk about something that will blow your mind. And it is your mind. Today we're talking about cognition and the human experience. So, I'm Ryan. And I think, unfortunately, this time, Player 3.
Yeah. Tell them why. Tell them why.
Because I can't talk about Crash well.
No, you can't. Not
So I get the really bad controller. It's falling apart. It has has joystick drift, and I have the worst character.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what's going on with me.
Yeah.
I'm doing good. I feel pretty good right now as player 1. I think I'm gonna come in pretty strong here and actually perform like a player 1 should. I think I might try and keep my crown here. We'll see how it goes. I have an eerie feeling. I know which way this one's gonna go, but we gotta talk it out at least. You know, we gotta give it a chance.
Same here. I like having my silver cup.
Silver medal.
It's hiding. I think I put it in my closet back there. I forgot to take it out for this episode.
Ooh. I actually just had a neat idea, but we can talk about that a little after. Actually, I'll just say right here, maybe we could do gold controller icon, silver controller icon, bronze controller icon.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Ooh, that would be cool.
Yeah, but
I'll look into
something
that.
we can figure out in the future.
Start,
I know we're a podcast that largely talks about media and video games, so I will say that this is actually inspired by a favorite of John and mine, Persona. But it goes. No, not every episode has to include Kingdom Hearts, though. There's the obligatory mention for this one.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, Dylan.
Somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah.
I already mentioned Crash.
I get it.
But
see,
it does go much beyond Persona.
We did Crash. We did Kingdom Hearts. We did Persona. Wait, did we do Smash?
Wait, dude, did you see that
did
Sora was in Smash?
We did Smash. We did Smash. We didn't do Kingdom Hearts. We talked about Sora in regards to Smash.
Okay.
No, I mean bring it up for this episode.
Okay.
Yeah, so here, I'll do it. Yeah, so I'm still working on KH1. All right, there we go. All right.
Okay. So this episode is on the mind and on human experience because I've had long conversations about things I find very interesting that a lot of people don't know. So let me start with this. Have you heard of the mind's eye? Picture something in your mind's eye.
Mm-mm.
Never. You've never been told to just picture something in your mind's eye.
I mean, not that phrase, but when you say
not that phrase. Visualize this in your head.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. Not everyone can do that. And it's actually a moderately large portion of people who cannot picture things in their head. When they're told to picture something, they literally don't understand that that's something other people can do often.
I mean,
they literally cannot form an image in their head that they're not currently looking at.
Like if you told me, Dylan, picture the globe. Picture a globe. Yeah. I'd be like, okay.
And you see it
in my head, and I can
see it.
No one, everyone else is like this. I can't get it. I can't picture it.
They have no idea it's a thing you can do. A lot of them because they can't do it. How would they know?
Super weird. That dude, all I see in my head, all that goes around all day is just visualizations. That's all my conscious is. I don't think in words. It sounds elementary, I guess, but I think in pictures. That's all I think in.
Okay, yeah. So I actually just looked it up. It is 2 to 3% of people do not have a mind's eye. They can't picture something.
That seems still high. That still seems high. Wow.
I think for me.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say. I think for me, it depends on the complexity of like what I'm trying to imagine. If it's just something like the globe or like something singular like that, then I can probably imagine it. But if it's like imagine this luxurious house with this in it and this in it and these many rooms and this many bathrooms.
But I'll say this, but it seems like, but there's a difference between having difficulty picturing like specific details and just not being able to at all.
Some people can't do some people can't. There was a girl doing a TED Talk on it. She couldn't picture the face of her daughter.
That's super weird.
Was her
Yeah,
face?
could've.
Was her daughter in the audience?
No. She's never been able to. She was
That's
talking
so
about her. She was
weird.
talking about her experience learning that she doesn't have this ability of the mind.
And so she's
It's
thinking the whole time, this is what everyone is.
yeah. She got
Wow.
a revelation,
Wow.
I believe in her 40s or 50s, that she lacked this fundamental human capability. She
Oh.
didn't know until decades into her life.
Well, I guess she doesn't have a palace then.
No. And so actually that's really interesting too. So let me ask this too, because I think it's a really interesting question. When you picture an image in your mind, spatially relative to you, where is it?
Right, like, okay, wait a minute.
What do you
Okay,
mean?
so
Like, if you had to say relative to you, like spatially, where is it? What you're picturing? Where does it hover? Like with what you're seeing? Do you have an answer?
Maybe
in
like
terms
a
of
foot and a half away from me, in front of me.
Foot and a half away in front. Okay.
I don't know.
so
That's just a
if you said
guess.
like, okay, so like picture this, and I'm
Mhm.
thinking about it, like, I don't know, say a basketball. So I'm thinking of a basketball right now.
Mhm.
I don't see it in front of me in the real world. Like, I more so see it, I think in my mind, there's an
Mhm.
additional space, and it's somewhere in there. Like,
Okay.
I don't go like this and like, okay, I'm thinking of a basketball, and I can see it like right here. I go, I'm thinking of a basketball, and I can see it inside of space. It almost feels like behind my eyes in a way.
Yeah, that's what I have too. So, the way I would best describe it is it's somewhere between, like, think about an overlay. Like we have a Discord
Yeah.
overlays, most of us. So somewhere in between that, but also like maybe behind my eye, like a plane slightly
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
is where I
That's
picture
so
it
weird that
spatially.
people can visually
Yeah.
like, describe that. It's so weird.
Yeah. And so it's really interesting that you and I have the same experience, but John has a slightly different
It's,
experience.
I don't
that's
know.
funny.
I
That's
just
the
like
perfect way of saying it. It's like right behind my eyes.
I just think I close my eyes and it's like a foot in front of me.
I don't have to close it, and then some people have to, when they picture things, do it visually in the room, in the space they occupy, like AR.
That's
Is
Oh,
how
no.
some people do it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That's not me.
So, and then you mentioned this too, that you don't think in words, Dylan.
No, not for a second. Not like ideas. I just see them playing out. I never see like the thing that's coming to my mind right now. Like even I'm like when I'm trying to remember something for like a calc exam. What I'm seeing, I'm not thinking of the definition of like I don't know, say like just like the definition of a derivative. Like I'm not thinking about what I wrote down on my pencil. What I'm seeing in my mind, in that plane right behind my eyes, is board work on the chalkboard and on my notebook. Like I'm seeing it as a whole image. I'm not going, oh yes, the definition of a derivative is da 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 da, and then I'm gonna turn on and apply it. I go, no. I'm looking and I'm going, okay. It's like somewhere, but I can see everything played out.
It's like
Interesting.
New ideas are all
so
pictures to me.
so it's like a picture of your notes.
Snapshot. And I
Okay.
go, okay.
So
So
isn't that like called like
and then
I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, isn't that considered like photographic memory?
No, I definitely don't have that. But like,
So,
but what I'm seeing is though, but I'm saying like this: I can see a snapshot, and then in that snapshot, I can start to remember and start reading out and filling out the board in my mind.
Mhm.
interesting. So then let me make sure I'm correct in this. You do not form thoughts abstractly in English in your mind.
No way.
John, do you?
Images?
Do you create thoughts in your mind in English? Like do you think to yourself and create thoughts and like inspect them in your head using the English language the same way you and I are talking to each other in English?
Well, I don't use Japanese. Yeah, I use
No.
English.
Okay. So that's called an inner monologue. And Dylan, that's something you don't have.
No, okay, so I definitely can talk to myself. Like I definitely can. Like I can hear. I can definitely
Okay,
like
Ryan,
stop.
let's leave this call. Let's have Dylan talk to himself.
Like I can hear myself. I think I can hear other people too. But I can like stop and I can talk to myself in it. But I think when I'm generating new ideas, or especially like recall, I'm not thinking auditory. I'm certainly not thinking like I'm thinking in pictures. I'm thinking in things I've seen. I have an inner monologue, and I have heard that people can't do that. I have heard that. I definitely do have an inner monologue. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not
I've
the way
actually
my initial is not like that.
I
Okay.
have met someone. I know someone there in one of my friend groups who has neither a mind's eye or inner monologue, and
Oh,
I
that's
don't know how to live.
weird.
And they never heard of the concept either. And they said, "So wait, you have voices in your head talking to you all the time?" And
It's like kinda, but it's like
kinda,
kinda.
but it's me. It's like let's
Kind
take this
of,
water
except
bottle.
I'm
It's
not
like yeah, I'm not
schizophrenic,
a crazy
but
person. It's like this water bottle is an idea, and
Yeah.
I'm using words to turn it and inspect it and observe it so that this idea is generated, and I'm using the English language to poke and prod and examine and see where I can go. I can, throw this water bottle and see what happens, and in that way, I can use English as well as my mind's eye to play out scenarios. And
right.
so he was like, so it's like someone talking to you. It's like you talking to yourself in a kind of mental space, and he had no idea. He thought everyone in our group was crazy.
Don't worry here. I'll bring it back. I'll bring the Kingdom Hearts back, guys. It's like that one cutscene in Birth by Sleep where Terra is talking to Xehanort in that one area, like post game, and it's like he's kind of talking to himself in a way about his body. I'm confusing the absolute crap out of Dylan right now, I know. But
Yeah.
it's similar. It's not dissimilar to that.
So then, John, let me ask you, how often, and Dylan too, how active is your inner monologue? Because some people, mine never stops. If
Yeah,
I'm
no,
awake.
mine's 24/7.
Yeah.
You know what I especially noticed it is like when I lay down for the day and lay my head down, and up until the very last second I'm awake, it doesn't stop. Like I
Yeah.
don't stop thinking to myself. I
Yeah.
just can't stop speaking to myself. Like it just never ceases.
Yeah.
Like all the time I'm talking to myself. And in fact, I could be saying words right now, and different words could be going on right now in the monologue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm not speaking, but I'm coming up with the word responses and answers to what you're saying as you're saying it and currently right now, which is really interesting that our mind can kind of do this in parallel.
My brain's going right now. Exactly. But I didn't say it.
Yeah.
I'm going exactly.
But then it's also coming up with different dialogue trees in an RPG. It's coming up with different paths and where can I take this conversation? What could they say? How should I respond?
Nuts.
And so that's an inner monologue, and a lot of people don't have that, and I literally cannot imagine living without it. It is as me as my right arm.
Yeah, that would be weird living without it. I mean, I'm so used to living with it.
It would be easier for me to live without sight than to live without my inner monologue if I had to give up one or the other.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I mean, I'm wearing glasses, so
yeah, you're already on that path.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I got glasses somewhere around here too. I'm starting to squinting a little bit, but no, that's so crazy because I'm thinking to myself, all right, if you don't have the inner monologue, how do you sort out good and bad ideas before executing on them? Just something to say. How do you go, all right, could say this, could say that. How does this go? This all happens in a second, If I said this, what's going to happen? If I said this, what's going to happen? I don't know.
I wonder too, if you could kind of observe it and make educated guesses on who does and doesn't have them. If someone has less of a filter, does that mean that they might not have as much of an inner monologue, or if they're more rash or just kind of do things on the fly? So it's really interesting to kind of consider.
That is interesting. I don't know, I try to be a little more ballsy, but I also have that inner monologue, so I don't know where that puts me.
Yeah,
maybe
so it's
a
healthy
barrier. Middle. Maybe a healthy middle, I don't know.
Yeah, for me it acts as my filter. I'm at base a very rude person, but I verbalize it very little because my inner monologue is no, you shouldn't say that. Do not say that.
Don't say that.
The thing I'm thinking about right now is thinking about a song in your head. There's sometimes where a very specific part of a song, I'm thinking of one right now, just doesn't stop looping in my head over and over again, and I can't stop.
What's really interesting about that
song stuck in your head,
right? But it's like people who don't have an inner monologue, can they do that?
That's a good question.
Most of them actually can, because that's recollection. It's generating new thoughts.
Right, it's
Some
memory.
can't. Yeah, generating new thoughts in language. That is recollection. And then here's something else too. Is there comes a threshold where you learn a different language well enough to, and especially this happens in dreams, dream and form an inner monologue in that language, even if you don't in the moment understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then one of my roommates too, my longest roommate, good friend, has been bilingual his entire life. He's half Panamanian. Um, his inner monologue is both in English and Spanish.
Wow, that's gotta be
That's
weird.
cool.
He
That's
literally,
definitely cool.
and it's like me where I have no idea how I would live my life without an inner monologue. He has no idea what it's like to not do that. To
Not to
switch
have
informed
to.
thoughts in both Spanish and English.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Oh, that's weird. I
Yeah,
couldn't
they
imagine having an inner monologue in a foreign language.
Well, that's
Yeah, like
Foreign to me.
I've heard
yeah.
too. Like sometimes when you are bilingual like that and like polylingual, sometimes like
Mhm.
you'll start comboing sentences together in different languages. Like you'll start out in English, like
Yeah.
not even thinking about it. Like start in English and then it spills into Spanish and then it goes into
Mhm.
German at the end. Like that sort of thing happens with like polylingual
Poly-
people.
And
Yeah.
especially if you do it before a certain age, the later it is, the
Yeah.
harder. So
Or yes.
I
Yes.
I am, decently into both Japanese and German, learning them. Real Axis powers type stuff.
Italians on the way.
Yeah, the Italian is next. I could never imagine forming thought in one of those languages. Not at my level.
No.
I would form a thought in
Yeah,
English and
because
then
it's one
translate
thing to
it.
think about the words and say like, I'm gonna try and form the sentence with your inner monologue, saying like, I'm gonna try and say this sentence, and you could say this
Mhm.
with your inner monologue. You can say, we're gonna try and make this sentence. Let's try and translate it in our head.
Mhm.
Practice our new language. But it's one thing to just start thinking like, that 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 that, but you're in a different language.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think
That's
part of
totally
that
nuts.
I think part of that is when you learn the language. I've heard the I've heard this saying so many times. Okay, the younger you are, the easier it is to learn a language, which has been at first it was weird to me, but the more I think about it, the more it makes sense because it's like your brain's still developing.
Yes.
As
Yes.
as a child, you're more susceptible to learning stuff like that, especially when you're like still learning English. If you're learning a second language or a third language on top of that, being able to learn all three is easier to an extent. And then as you're older, like our age now, thinking in all those different languages is just second nature.
Yeah.
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like thinking in English is for all three of us right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. And so let me ask you this. What do you think causes people to not have an inner monologue or mind's eye?
It has to be hereditary.
You
I think
think?
it, I
I think
think it
so.
has to be something with like
I think it's
how
hereditary.
creative
there's-
they are. I
don't
think
think
it
it's
deals with their
damaged.
personality a little
So
bit.
there's the nature nurture aspect, and like I think it could be hereditary. I think it could be genetic, but there are a lot of cases where it's not present in the parents or the children, but it's present in the middle link. But then also there are cases where a child is like nurtured and stimulated their mind quite a bit as a kid, and they still don't develop it. So I would say I would have to imagine part of it is genetic, but I think a larger part of it is stimulation and being spoken to and speaking as a child,
Yeah.
like young,
I,
3 years old, up to 5.
I see how
I'd
you're
say
saying that. So
it's
you're saying
like
like the more stimulation you receive earlier on, the more the untrained, I guess is one way of putting it, brain has to
Mhm.
start thinking more about what the hell's going on around it.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so then it just starts on a sort of train track thing where it's like, or a
Yeah.
snowball effect where it's like,
Mhm.
okay, now we have to start thinking all the time about what's
Mhm.
going on around me.
Mhm.
I don't know. I just think that's such a, and like here's like a little branch, but like a little tangent, but it's like we don't know a lot about consciousness or the
Yeah.
brain. Like we don't know a
Yeah.
lot, and I wonder like how long it's going to take for us to understand. Like we barely understand dreams. We barely
Yeah.
understand dreams.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
Yeah.
true.
we could say like, okay, yeah, it's like the we don't even like you could say it's the unconscious, but like, do we even know it's the unconscious? Like, we know it's our brain somehow sorting, like trying to work out a problem. It might not even be that, but it's like that's what people go with. It's like, all right,
Oh, I thought it
but we
was
don't.
like memories of the day.
Yeah, but
Sorting
like
through
yeah,
that.
like anything like that, like trying to sort out and organize the day. But it's like even then, it's like, damn, man, like we don't know anything definitive, like barely anything definitive about the brain.
Right, we
So
can just have
I
we just have
oh, go ahead.
guesstimations, honestly.
Yeah.
I have some really cool facts about dreams too. So number one, it is impossible to read a book in a dream. It's not something you can do. So if you
I
ever
will
want
try
to,
tonight.
if you ever feel like something's off, like when you're in a dream, you never really think like, "Am I in a dream?" But you can develop a kind of mental habit of like, "Oh, something feels off. Maybe I should try reading something." You can test it that way. And then another is, uh, your brain cannot generate a new face. You, in a dream, will never generate a new human face. You will go into the databanks and grab one and put it on a body.
Yeah, so what do you think by like age 20, like how many people have you passed?
Yeah.
A million?
Hundreds of thousands, yeah.
Almost a
Hundreds of
million, maybe?
thousands, upward of a million, yeah. And like it can be Joe on the street.
Yeah.
Like
Joe Schmo.
you never knew his name.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like
So
so
wait, what is
that's
this thing about not being able to read though? Where does that come from?
your brain cannot generate and read a book in a dream at the same time. Because your brain would have to supply the book in like reading while your brain is trying to process reading.
Wow.
And it's not something the brain can do in parallel.
That's
And actually,
so weird.
that's a really interesting experience. I've had something recently, an experience that I've never really had before in a dream, but it was like interesting, so I want to talk about it. I essentially have you ever played Gary's Mod?
Yeah, I mean I've seen
I've
it. I haven't
heard of
played it, but
it.
I've seen it.
Do you,
Yeah.
do you
I've seen
know
it.
the missing texture thing?
No.
No.
So if you download something like let's say a map pack, and it
Okay.
relies you to have like it uses assets from Team Fortress 2, and you don't have Team Fortress 2 installed, there will be like walls and things that rely on assets from Team Fortress 2, where it's just black and pink triangles or black and pink squares.
Yes, I have seen this.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
I have not.
I had that
Okay.
in a dream in a library where it's like books were untextured and it was images of fictional
What?
characters like covering the books and everything. And I have no idea why that
super
was.
weird.
But it
That
was
is weird.
exactly like I was playing Gary's Mod and it was a missing texture.
Wow.
It's hard to imagine. I don't know what Gary. I have zero experience with Gary's Mod.
You can look it up on your
Yeah, we
second
can totally
monitor.
look it up.
Gary's Mod missing texture.
Wow. That is super weird.
Yeah, and so that was a really surreal experience, and I knew the second it happened I was in a dream, and then it happened in a library, and so then I tried reading a book and I couldn't. The inside of the book had the missing texture too.
That's super weird.
Oh,
Yeah,
these purple boxes?
yeah,
Yeah,
like purple and
pink-
black,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it'll just like cover something if an asset is missing.
That's weird.
So weird.
Yeah, the mind is wild, dude. And that's why I wanted to have this talk, because it's like, dude, just think about this and what life was like. So going back to the inner monologue, then just think that the default state for humans before we developed language was to not have an inner monologue.
Yeah, we didn't have language.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
so
what are you doing? What are you
and
doing
so
out there?
there was a first person, and it could have been, within the last 40,000 years, the first person to ever have an internal monologue, and no one around him knew what it was.
Yeah, he's probably freaking the hell out.
He probably thought something
He's
was
like,
wrong
oh
with
my
him.
God.
He probably
He's like,
thought
oh
they
my
were
God.
demons. He
Yeah, he
probably
probably
thought they
did.
were demons.
That is so nuts.
Someone has schizophrenia.
Yeah, but it
Wow.
wasn't schizophrenia. It was
Right,
what
it's
we
just
all
like normal.
experienced.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yike.
That is pretty crazy.
That is
Yeah.
pretty yike.
Yeah, and so that was like kind of the first topic, and I had very few notes on it because I just wanted to shoot
Yeah,
the
no,
breeze.
it's nuts.
Yeah.
So the second is reality in the mind. So how do you know what reality is?
Mm.
And like there's this idea of collective consciousness where the majority, if they recognize something as reality, it kind of is reality. And there are there are actually a couple of fictional stories that address some of these kind of psychological ideas and concepts. Like there's one where a girl just like stops being recognized by some people as like a person, a real life living person, and it basically spreads like a contagion to the point where like the main character is one of the last few people who can see her, and like everyone ignores her because it's just like in the society that she doesn't exist. And then one day he wakes up and he can't perceive her anymore, and he has to struggle to realize that she's a real living person.
That is nuts.
That's
And
weird.
there's some kind of syndrome for it, but I forget. But yeah, this idea of collective consciousness, where consciousness of the society shapes it, and it's like if everyone believes something to be true, to what extent can they force it to be true? So if everyone
I don't
believes that
know.
humans are if everyone believes humans are peaceful, would you form a peaceful society?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's super, super interesting. Like,
Or would you ignore something that is right in front of your eyes?
yeah,
That
I
does
don't know.
remind me of it does remind me of Harry Potter, how like they say, oh yeah, there's this crazy magical thing, and they're like, how do the non-magical folk, the muggles, not see it? And they're like, oh well, they just ignore it.
Yeah, yeah. So let's say there have been societies throughout time where different things that we consider morally abhorrent are normalized. One, for instance, would be what we legally define as pedophilia. Has been normal through countless societies in history. So if they were to see it, they would think nothing of it. And so to what extent can like you just ignore these things or not see them as real issues as a
Yeah.
society? And
Yeah,
obviously
it's
I think that's something that's
subjective.
like yeah. Yeah.
It's
And
also like it's like how do we all well what you're saying, like I know you're talking about like as far as collective consciousness, but it's like where do I'm just gonna go down a rabbit hole, but it's like where do we start saying like no, like these morals are correct.
mhm.
I think
Like
it's hard to agree on stuff like that, but
oh it 100% is. It 100% is.
And
I just
especially when
just spend five
um
minutes on Twitter.
yeah. Well, and especially when you consider the kind of whole concept that uh you can't really know anything for certain. You could be schizophrenic. Your senses could be lying to you. We know that there are people whose senses lie to them. There's Aristotle's experiment of the cave, where if someone was essentially tied to a cave wall and all
Oh,
they
I've heard
saw
this.
was shadow puppets, and I thought that was the real world because it's all they experienced. To them, it's
that would
real,
be
and
the real
so
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
or simulation theory. Are we in a simulation? How could we know? And actually, believe it or not, there are philosophers who spend a large amount of time looking for glitches in the matrix to prove that we're in a simulation.
Why?
Waste of money.
And 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 and,
Seriously.
and to me, it's partially like, well, it doesn't matter. I do believe we're in base reality. I can't prove it. No one ever could. But I do
It's
believe
so
in
so nuts.
Yeah.
yeah. But also like, two. So let's say we don't know the full rules of our universe. What if everyone believing the same thing actually turned that thing true? What if scientific concepts that have been proven because they became populous? It'd
Yeah.
be unprovable that that change occurred.
Yike.
Yeah, dude, it's so interesting. Hold on, I am looking for this experience of like things, and then there's also something called like Adolescent Syndrome. Um, in like different cultures, and like so it can manifest in some different ways, but like one is like if you believe you're in pain or like that you're getting hurt or that you're
Oh,
wounded, they
okay.
can manifest.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
like a phantom pain kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
you sit
and
there and linger on it. It's like, no, we can make that happen for you. That's what the brain says.
yeah,
Well, we can make that happen for you.
yeah, and
Yeah.
if you want to be sick, you can make yourself
Well,
sick.
this is like that interesting case. They made a TV show about it. I don't remember ever hearing about it. It must have happened in like the early 2000s, like or 2010s, like 2000, maybe 11, 12, 13, something like that.
Mhm.
The girl's still in jail, but it's this whole thing about dating this guy online, and then but like the point of this thing was that the mother had Munchausen syndrome by proxy, so she put it on to other people. And what that meant was that she was getting her daughter, like, she was always going to the doctor when the daughter wasn't sick and had like a stomach pump put in when there was nothing wrong with her. She forced the doctors to do that. And it's like the mother, see, now this is where I kind of want to stop myself. It's like, all right, something like that. It's like, how much of that is forcing reality, or and how much of that is just an actual mental condition? And like, how do you differentiate the two? And I guess that's really up to us, society, to say, at a certain level, it's like where are we to say, all right, no, this is what normal is, and what you're doing is not normal.
Yeah.
Where is that line? We draw it somewhere. We have to.
Yeah.
We have to draw it, because it's like
Yeah.
because then we could say either everything's a mental freaking condition, or everything is just the brain working like it's supposed to and producing reality, like we just said. Like, you linger on it and like make it happen. It's like, okay, it's like, where is that line? That's what I'm curious about.
And all you can do really is, all you yourself can do is like live within the constraints that you know, and they could be entirely wrong, but what can you do about that? You just have to live as you can.
Pretty much just be
So
happy.
there are also a couple of things, like, have you ever heard of Laplace's demon?
No.
Laplace's demon?
Laplace's. Like, Laplace is a historical mathematician. He basically said, if you know the momentum and the location of every atom, molecule, subatomic particle in the universe, then the future is determined based off the laws of physics. And so if you were a demon outside of the system, you could calculate everything in the future. And so I've actually seen a time loop narrative told from this perspective, where someone's mind is calculating everything in the future, and that was them living the time loop. And then their mind adjusted because their mind was Laplace's demon and lived differently in the next time loop. And it was all calculating what the future would be based off of this concept of Laplace's demon. And then it would take that knowledge and do another loop because their knowledge changed the next loop.
Yeah.
And so they were in time loop. They were living this time loop in an instant by calculating basically infinitely how this knowledge would change how they lived and then change the loop.
So it's like anti-free will, essentially.
Yeah,
like everything's predestined, predetermined.
Yeah, it's called material determinism. It's based off the concept of material determinism. And I don't think that's quite true. Quantum mechanics is a route where we can scientifically prove of, like, this doesn't work consistently. So there's things where we know don't work consistently. So it's
for it to be valid, like, it has to work in a vacuum, or
it's like if something could calculate the exact location and momentum of every particle, subatomic or otherwise, it would have to then be in the system and influence the system and could not attribute or calculate for itself. So it'd actually have to be something outside of the system and bigger than the system. So you would actually probably have to have a separate universe bigger than our own to calculate the outcome of our universe.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's
just trying to wrap my mind around that is extremely difficult.
Same here.
This isn't quite where I wanted to take it, but there are like some really interesting scientific ideas that we haven't been able to prove or explore properly. So this might just turn into the science episode. So do you know what a tesseract is?
Yes, Iron Man used one.
Yeah, Loki used one.
Yeah. A tesseract is a 4-dimensional cube.
Of course.
It's the fourth dimension. It's a fourth dimensional version of a square.
Okay. Does it make an appearance in Endgame in Infinity War by chance?
Perhaps.
Okay. The original Avengers.
It's this really interesting idea that we could actually find and interact with fourth dimensional objects in our 3-dimensional space, because light interacts with 4th dimensional objects to create 3-dimensional shadows. Basically, light subtracts 1 dimension when casting shadows, So fourth dimensional objects have three-dimensional
Oh,
shadows, and
yeah, that
three-dimensional
makes
objects
sense.
have
Okay.
two-dimensional shadows,
Yeah, that makes
which
sense.
is really interesting. So that's just like a quick tangent. Another one. Do you know what dark matter is?
Yes, I know of it.
It's
It's the reverse
it's
of
like
matter, but no one knows what it is, and people just
Mm,
use it for science fiction stuff to basically be a be whatever they want it
n-
to be, like in the
Not
Flash.
quite. So dark matter is different from antimatter. The reverse of matter is antimatter. Dark matter is something else.
is dark
Okay,
Dark.
matter just like that space like
the space between atoms and matter.
No.
okay. Yeah, no, that's what
So
can be, I guess.
I
dark
don't know.
matter is something we have not properly defined. It is a scientifically lazy explanation for a phenomenon we are observing. With all the planets and stars in our galaxy that we have observed, all of them together only generate 30% of the gravity in the galaxy. The
Wow.
other 70%, the force of gravity in our galaxy, we call dark matter because we don't know where that gravity comes from. We don't know where 70% of the gravity in our galaxy comes from. No idea.
Are there
Yeah,
any ideas what that might be?
No,
Because it
no,
seems kind of important.
it's just called dark matter.
Okay.
good for
We
us, I
don't know where
guess.
we don't know where
Thank
it's
you,
generated
scientists, for
from.
your efforts.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for
Yes,
nothing.
thank you.
But while you're talking about antimatter, so it's true that you can't create or destroy matter, but we've created simultaneously matter and antimatter, and then they collided and blinked out of existence in one experiment. I forget the exact processes, but essentially they created in like a very small space, and they charged metal, and something about it popped both matter and antimatter into existence, and they were basically fated to collide. They were like drawn to each other like positive and negative electrical forces, and then they stopped existing. Dude,
Uh,
It's like
okay.
what? It's like
yeah, they
what?
literally created. So they didn't create matter; they created positive and negative matter in equal amounts, and they canceled each other. Which could suggest too that all the matter we've observed in our universe, there could be an equal amount of antimatter out there. So actually, this is something we could, take in a like idea. One of the Big Bang wasn't omnidirectional. It didn't go out in all of
Oh, good
space.
show.
It went out in one direction, and then antimatter went out in the other, and it'll eventually collapse. Or what if antimatter went out in a fourth dimension or fifth that we don't know about?
So not to be that guy, but like Interstellar kind of touches on what the fourth dimension might look like because we do have no idea what that might be, and the idea of the fourth dimension was something like beyond linear time, but you can affect
Yeah.
the 3D world that we live in and that we can look at and say, okay, this is going in an X, Y, and Z. But it's like there is that fourth dimension that we can't see, but can be interacted with, obviously, in the movie. But
Yeah.
like something that we right now, as far as we know, if this is present day, we have no idea, of course, because now I'm all types of screwed up. But if this is present day as we know it, we have no way. We have no way of interacting with the fourth dimension. But it could be in the future. This is what's so messed up. Like in the future, whatever that is, because now again, I'm all types of screwed up. Whatever the future means to you in our linear timeline, we can start affecting with it, and the fourth dimension might be affected right now as we speak. Like someone could be fiddling with it right now
Yeah.
if we
Okay.
know how to react or interact with it. But
And
that's
that's why material determinism is kind of hard to argue, is because you don't know what you don't know
yeah.
and what could
Yeah.
be affecting it, and so is there something with true free will that is affecting the material world, i.e. souls? Which our soul could be fourth dimensional. Think about that.
Yeah.
Heaven
I
and
don't
hell would just
know.
be another. So think about this. Actually, this is really interesting. Heaven and hell in Earth could be a spectrum in another dimension. So there could be a three-dimensional hell space and a three-dimensional heaven space, and that dimension between the realms would be a fourth dimension. Just like time. Time isn't a spatial dimension, but it is a dimension. There is a difference, And then so this is really interesting about quantum mechanics and string theory. I cannot explain this well at all. String theory is
Yeah,
really complicated.
Yeah.
Only string theorists are allowed in this
Yeah.
podcast here.
Yeah.
So basically, string theory is that all matter and forces are made up of vibrating strings, and these strings like connect to each other, and they vibrate at different frequencies, and they can also like weave together and like form essentially string theory cloths, and then those can stack on top of each other in different dimensions. And for the math to properly work out with the vibrations and everything that they suggest, there are 11 different spatial dimensions at least. At least.
This is so nuts. This is so crazy.
This is
Yeah,
insane.
so essentially we are in a three-dimensional fabric out of at least 11 dimensions.
We
Which
can
is
come up with
crazy.
this, but we can't even decide where fucking gravity comes from.
Well, how do we explore? The galaxy's too
true.
big.
That's true.
The galaxy's too big. At least in string theory, like this is all stuff that is directly creating us.
Yeah.
Tiny, way too tiny to observe, smaller than light, but
Right.
it's there. So dude, it's wild, and that's the problem with like space is just it's too big.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, those are just like different scientific phenomenon things that I've heard and read and I'm probably misrepresenting, at least to some extent, but it's all really cool.
Yeah, it totally
Yeah.
is.
And so kind of going back to what we have structured in terms of like reality and cognition and everything. So have we told you, Dylan, the concept of persona? Because it's really interesting.
Sure we have.
I can vaguely say like there is a different world or something like that where you have a persona and you can embody that and like live that out in that realm, something like that.
Yeah.
Yes and no.
All right,
So
correct
yeah.
me.
No,
Jesus.
that's pretty close.
Yeah.
I thought it was something close to that.
So basically, there's a realm within the mind where you can go, and there's like a collective, like one for all of society, and then there's one for like people who have like really distorted visions of the world, who are objectively wrong.
Yeah.
And those are called palaces. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say usually this whole thing is called the Metaverse, just to like keep it simple.
Yeah. So in this Metaverse, it is the realm of people's minds, and you can like their distorted desires or view of the world takes physical form, and you can steal it. You can make them see the world for how it is. And so like there's this I'll go into the first villain because it's not spoiling much. There is a ex-Olympian athlete who is a PE coach, or PE teacher and volleyball coach.
Kamoshida.
Absolute bastard Kamoshida. He sees the school as his castle, somewhat metaphorically, but also somewhat literally. Like he sees himself as the king of the castle, and so your goal is to, like, and he abuses the students. He sexually harasses the female students. Really, really bad dude.
Yeah.
And so you stop him, but you take away his desire to like rule and like to see this. So it's really interesting. And then late in the game, they get into the concept that you show a large corruption, a national level corruption, and society doesn't see it because they don't want to see it. And so you literally have to go into the collective consciousness and battle basically the god that they worship to fill the gaps, the god of the gaps. And it's so interesting. So
getting into spoilers.
I kept it pretty vague.
I guess.
But it's really interesting how they do it and approach it.
Here's my question. Oh, sorry, I was gonna move the conversation a little bit.
Yeah.
So here's my question. As for where Kamoshida is concerned, you steal his desires. He no longer has that drive to see himself as a king in his castle. Do you think they took away his ambition, like all of it? Made him like almost a mindless slave to the later antagonist you were talking about?
No. I think they just take away the distortion. The ambition is still there. And so what I'm wondering is, so for people who change suddenly, how is that something that's divine? Is that something that's psychological? Like people, because this is documented here and there, people can become a completely different person one day to the next. And so what does that have to do with cognition? What does that have to do with reality? What does that have to do with matter? Divine inspiration, you hear, complete culture shock. You hear people who are like severely obese and they just decide one day, I'm done with sugar. It's out of my diet. I'm exercising. I don't want to be this person anymore. And they just become a different person.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think causes that? Because that is psychological, right?
It's definitely psychological.
Maybe something to do with like what they dream about the night before, like I guess what experiences they have in their dreams a little bit, and where their mind is at as they're waking up.
Do you think, what are the odds you would place something metaphysical as the root versus it's entirely psychological? It's a psychological, because we can say that living one day to the next, being basically the same any day to day, is the psychological norm. What do you think causes such aberrations where people just change so drastically and suddenly?
I would say.
Do you think it's a psychological root? Do you think it's some kind of stimulus?
A little bit of both.
Okay. I would say I'm a moderately religious person. But even taking out God and Christianity, I would say it's something more likely quantum or metaphysical, where I just don't think our understanding of brain chemistry suggests that that should even be possible.
Yeah. I don't know. I just like when you mentioned that, I started thinking about season 1 of The Flash, and this might be getting into spoiler territory for that, but there's one character in the show who went through something traumatic, and people were saying to other characters, yeah, when this happened, he was a completely different person after that point in time. When this horrific thing happened to him in his personal life. But what we don't realize, obviously, is that character literally was swapped out for a different character in the show, in the context of the show. But like, I think that we grow from trauma like that and become not necessarily better people, but just different from those experiences.
So I do agree, but I would also put this out. That is a somewhat clear-cut case where there is a direct stimulus that you can look at and say, oh, this had this effect. There are instances where you cannot identify such a stimulus that would cause that level of change.
I guess.
Like literally I've mentioned, so like there have been completely degenerate people, people who spend all their money, they gamble, they sleep around, and then one day they wake up and they're like, I'm over this. And it's documented throughout history. It's rare. It is exceedingly rare. But it does happen.
Maybe, yeah. Makes me think about like I was gonna say, it makes me think about I think I forgot what I was gonna say.
This probably has something to do with Persona or Kingdom Hearts, if I can lead you in the right direction.
Probably.
I don't know. I think that like we're talking about these sudden changes and
I found it.
No, go ahead.
I found my thought. Sorry. So it's like
while you have it.
It's like how a depressed person will actually. It has nothing to do with either, but it reminds me of like if a depressed person or someone with mental health issues will like do something terrible, whether it is to themselves or the people around them, and you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea this person had it in them, and it's like. It makes me think of that because it's like, oh, not many people knew about it, so it's okay-ish, I guess, to be surprised by that, but also not okay in the sense that we should be looking out for that. But,
so you're kind of talking about like maybe people snapping and going postal, like otherwise ordinary people. And so then are you suggesting that just as people can snap to being bad and doing horrific things, they can just as easily snap to living a bad life and just going good because something in their mind needed that change and it just happens.
Not necessarily. I don't know. I'm speaking. I'm
Oh,
speaking
go ahead.
purely of personal experiences and what I've heard, like online and in school and whatnot. But I'm working with what I got here, so I don't know for sure.
I think it's really interesting that you bring that up because now that I do think about it, you do hear, like, you've heard the expression going postal, and, you know, there's the guy who, I think it was Tylenol he poisoned and killed, like, 8 children in the
Jeez.
80s. That's why there's that seal that you have to do on medicine. A guy poisoned, like, 8 children in the 80s, killed them. Like, ordinary people, otherwise ordinary people who just go crazy and do horrific things. If they can do that, why is there any reason saying the bad people can't just suddenly become good?
Yeah. Unless
That's
the
really
phantom thieves
interesting.
exist.
And what causes that? Dude, it's impossible
interesting.
to know, but
Yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
and so then there was one last general topic I wanted to cover, and it's reality and personhood. And so going into this, how much of what you would label yourself do you think is accurate, and how much of the labels you would come up with yourself do you think make you? So, for instance, I would say I'm a college student. I would say I'm a gamer. I would say that I am a son, a brother.
Okay.
Gamer
I-
first.
Yeah,
Gamer.
gamer first. No, I came up
Yeah.
with college student first.
Gamer.
Um,
Gamer, bro. That's what I was gonna say in your tombstone, your epitaph. It's like
yeah,
gamer,
Gamer.
son, beloved gamer.
Gamer first. Gamer has to
So-
be first.
And I could probably go for another 5 minutes coming up with
Yeah,
labels.
sure.
Right.
How
right.
much of that is me?
So
Yeah.
here's my take on the matter, and I'm assuming, at least for myself, I'm going to label myself with things that I know I am, that no one can just try to, like, fight me saying, oh, no, you're not this. I'm a college student. I think we can all agree on that. I am employed at my 2 places of employment. I'm not going to say them here, but I'm employed at them. I think we can agree on that. I'm a Twitch streamer because I stream on Twitch. I do podcasting stuff. We all 3 of us do. I think saying something like I'm a gamer is a little vague in the sense
That's
of,
true.
okay, well, what games do you play? Like, do you play
If it's
Fortnite?
not
Do
Dark
you play
Souls, it's
Call of
not
Duty?
gaming.
Exactly. And it's like things that can be proven that I'm not. I don't label myself in that capacity, and I'm thinking.
So you're saying it's like potentially dangerous to label yourself something that can be misconstrued by other people, and then you kind of have like an identity crisis in a way where it's like this whole time I'm thinking I'm this thing, and my interpretation, my inner monologue, my interpretation of it is one thing, but everyone else around me is saying it's another thing. Because what I take away from what you say, John, is like, okay, I'm a gamer, right? But then it's like I can get into that. It's like, okay, mobile,
Am I really?
like, what are you? It's like, okay, so now you've been saying this. You in your head, you've said, I'm a gamer. It's part of my identity. I'm a gamer. I do this. This is important to me. I like doing this stuff. But then I go, no, not really, John. Like, you play Clash of Clans. You're not a gamer.
Yeah.
Obviously, no. I'm just saying, for example, it's like, no, like there are, but then you have like, man, like then it's like, what am I? Like, what am I? If that's not what I am, it's like, so when you're saying, Ryan, how much of that is me? It's like, how much of it is me interpreting society's, or how much of it
labels
is
and
me
applying them to myself.
correctly reading society's interpretation of labels that I put onto myself?
Yeah, and how many
wrong and how many are right?
How many identities does it take to truly paint an accurate picture of a person?
Yeah, that's nuts.
Can you?
Yeah.
Can you?
And the thing is, though, I have been debating this in my head with my own inner monologue.
Whoa,
you could
have
say.
one?
Yeah. I've been debating this for years now. Am I a good person? I
Yeah.
don't think here's my opinion. I don't think I don't have an opinion actually. I think pretty much I'm a person. Whether I'm a good person or a bad person is up to everyone else. That's my
That's fair.
opinion.
You want to hear my opinion on that?
Let's hear
It's a
your
really
opinion.
interesting one. Everyone is both a good and bad person. You can be both.
Okay, that's fair.
You know, I consider schools of philosophy a lot. And I growing up, I always got a sense of like the right thing was utilitarian, and I hated it because like utilitarianism convince you to do a lot of bad things.
Yep.
So I think you can do the best thing in a given situation. Like, let's say you could save 5 people, 5 like normal, healthy young adults, but you have to kill a child to do it. Weird situation, never gonna happen.
Yeah.
Killing the child, killing the child is always going to be a wrong thing. It is always wrong to kill a child. It is also wrong to let the people die, which is more wrong.
Yeah. And that measure
Yeah.
is what is like. That's what the debate is for, in a way. It's
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so you
what
you can,
value do we put? It's like how much societal value do we put on individuals and kind of like things and ideas.
And also you as a person in that situation.
Yeah, just
And-
you as yourself thinking like, all right, I have to like. It's like a value, like literally value thing.
Yeah.
Value of something.
Yeah. And so I think it's really interesting because like no matter what choice you make in that situation, you are both doing the wrong thing and the right thing.
Yeah.
It's subjective.
Which it is, but also like you are in terms of virtue and good or bad, the collection of your good decisions and your bad decisions, and some decisions are both. That's undeniable. Like I'm trying to think of an example.
Oh, I know one.
The
Holocaust. I'm sure some Nazis during that time thought, oh, this is a great idea, murdering trillions of people. And obviously, and us three here, we're thinking, no, that was an awful idea. That's horrific.
But you definitely probably had some Nazis too that are like, this is disgusting.
Yeah, well, let me say this too.
Why didn't they stop him?
There were also soldiers who were powerless, who were cogs on the machine, and they're like, I go along with this or my family dies. Keeping their family alive is a definitive good. Supporting their family is a definitive good.
That's true.
Going along with the war machine is wrong. They were getting their family killed
in the West side, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
If you're in the Reich, it's like, all right.
Yeah.
But yes.
But getting their family killed would have been wrong. Even if standing up to the war machine and Hitler would have been right.
Yeah.
Either way, they were wrong and right.
Yeah.
You can be both.
Yeah.
You
think we live in that constant state of like
wrong and right?
Yeah.
Mostly living in the right and wrong simultaneously.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do. Like you can read a book and morally enrich yourself and spread good ideas and good values and philosophy. Well, that book was made by killing trees. You're supporting that industry. Everything you buy is made with or has contributed slave labor, essentially. Looking at China, looking at India.
It's hard to be selfless in this day and age.
Yeah.
It's hard to stand and say, like, this is wrong. Like you're saying, like, well, why didn't the soldiers just say no to the Nazis? Like, it doesn't work like it just can't work like that. Like
fear.
Yeah.
Like fear. Yeah. Societal pressure.
Wanting to
like, what are you
support
supposed
their
to
family?
do? Like, yeah, exactly. What are you supposed to do?
Well, and I was talking about earlier about reality and versus cognition. How much can you kind of imagine things and change how people perceive things through society? We all wrong and we all believe it, and we also all participate in it.
Yeah.
Our shoes, our electronics, like it's the case that they're made, and so we all would say and intervene if someone was in chains being forced to work. But if someone is doing child labor for $2 an hour to get cobalt for batteries or electronics, then that's something that we don't see it out of sight, out of mind, even though we are funding it. Which feels terrible to say, and I'm sorry for bumming out the listeners. But it is true that, we're enriching ourselves, we're making a friend. Like, let's say I buy a friend, let's say a video game. Well, I've done a good thing for my friend, and I've done a bad thing for the cogs in the supply machine who are suffering to keep the system going.
Right.
So yeah, like I said, it can be both. And considering you play a very personal, minor role in the supply chain, I would say your personal culpability is much lower than the joy you bring to your friend. Buying things for your friend, I'd say, is a generally good thing. It's a nice thing to give gifts.
Yeah.
So I don't say like you're very personally, morally responsible for that, but still interesting to consider.
It is, yeah.
It does also remind me. Now I'm gonna get some details wrong with this, but it does remind me of a story I heard somewhere where it was like a little kid was like throwing some beached fish back into the ocean, and a man walked by and said, "Hey, there's like hundreds of beached fish here. How are you making a difference in helping out the situation? You're only like throwing in one or two." And then the kid picked up another one, threw it in the ocean, and said, "Well, it helped that one."
Yeah.
So
and that is a good lesson, help what you can, where you can. And it's humans' natural instinct to, we generally have a hierarchy of what we owe to different people. Like, for instance, parents, their number one concern should be, and normally is, their children, and then their friends, and then their community, then their country, and then, these people in Africa who are suffering, very unfortunate. I mean, they aren't known by this person. That person has higher obligations. And so it's good to help them. It's great to help them, but you need to kind of help the people in your lives first. Which is generally how humans have always functioned, which is interesting that that's always been the way. And it might just be how we've evolved.
Right.
Man, it's a really cool conversation. Like,
There's been plenty of places I didn't consider it would go, but I'm really happy about it.
Yeah.
So, how much, like, would you say you attribute your personhood to like labels and identities versus how much do you just like think like I am me, like I am not these things, I am just a person doing things, and even that's a label, but it's like
I
you just
mostly
don't think about it.
I mostly don't consider labels. Like, I mostly just say I'm just going about my business.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Because some people completely define it. I think I over-define myself with labels. I would like just to live more and not think about what am I, who am I, how does that control me, what would I rather be?
I'm like right in between. I mentioned it before, but yeah, like anything non-controversial, stuff that I'm definitively am that cannot be, I guess, thought about. That's what I am, and I don't really I don't try to dwell on things that could define me, but I'm not entirely sure if it does.
So, and then if that being the case, how much pride or shame do you think you should draw from immutable qualities of yourself, if any? So, like, I'm Irish. I'm proud to be Irish. I love Irish heritage.
Right.
And that's fine and good. I have no control over being Irish.
Yeah.
Why is that something I should be proud of?
Yeah.
Or you hear Pride Parade, LGBT. A lot of people are pushing being prideful about that. Or conversely, Europeans, British, oh, we were former colonizers. Our ancestors did horrible things to the Native Americans. I should feel shame for that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what did you do? You know? So is it okay to say like, oh, I feel pride for being Irish, and ignore like, oh, I shouldn't feel any shame for what happened to the Native Americans. That wasn't me. What's the right balance for that?
Yeah. It's totally.
I would think it'd be like being proud or not being proud of the people who are more Irish than you, as compared to how Irish you are. I guess the people that speak in an Irish accent, the people who live in Ireland or close by Ireland,
Yeah,
the
and
people who
I think it's also fair to say that every single civilization in humanity is stained with a large amount of
yeah,
evil. Every single one.
yeah,
Um, and
we all
so
yeah,
what you can do is you can just, be prideful and take joy in the good things and recognize and acknowledge the bad, but move on because,
mhm.
it is your heritage and it needs to be accounted for, but it's
Well, it's just
also
like,
not.
I
yeah, it's just
mean,
asking yourself, like, how important. Well, like you say, like, you over label yourself. It's like, how important are the labels to you? I'm
Mhm,
mostly Italian and Russian, but I don't think for 2 seconds about anything culturally, and
mhm,
that could be just my family, I guess. But
yeah,
speaking for me, it's like I
mhm.
don't ever, like, literally ever think about where I come from, like in terms
Yeah,
of like genetically what I am. I love
yeah,
history and like I love the family tree and I love like all of that. I'm not saying that like but
yeah.
I just don't ever think like I gotta do Italian stuff because I'm Italian, or I gotta do Russian stuff because my family's Russian Orthodox.
Mhm.
Like,
Well,
yeah,
where we come from too has a very large Greek community, and a lot of those people
yeah, that's true.
very much
yeah,
define
That's
themselves
true.
by being
Yeah, so
Greek.
that's totally true. Yeah,
yeah.
that's definitely
So
true.
it's
I
it's really
mean,
interesting the spectrum of how you can define yourself and
Yeah,
like the importance. And I think sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong.
yeah,
yeah. I mean, I think in small ways I identify myself, but not in big ways. Like
Hmm.
I like pizza. I got a little Italian in me. I'm not like speaking Italian here. I'm not from
Yeah,
Italy, but I have some tastes, literally tastes that Italians
yeah,
share, but I'm not
yeah,
like I'm not from Italy or anything like that.
yeah.
yeah.
Um
It's just I think it does come down to like how important is how important is it to you? I don't know. It's
yeah.
like
Hmm.
I mean,
to me, not
it's
that
cool to me,
much.
but it's
To
not
some,
really
yeah, you're right in the middle, and like Ryan, you think deeply about your Irish heritage. Like that's fine, but then it's like okay, so there's our base. Like, what are now the effects of that? Like,
Hmm.
then you
yeah.
start thinking morally about what have your people done, and I never think
Yeah,
about that. I never think
yeah.
Mhm.
about. I never
Yeah.
think like, well,
Well,
technically, my family was on the bad side of World War II. I never think about that. I
well,
No,
never think about that.
I don't
I don't think
either.
much about heritage, but I do think of myself of like, oh, I'm kind of lazy, which is a label. It's a really, really subjective label, but
Subjective.
it is
Yeah.
one. And so
Yeah.
I can observe myself through that lens,
Mm,
and I can think about how I want to change, and
mm,
also where I would fail.
mm.
And
Mhm.
so it is good to label yourself and adjust, but also if you overdo it and you don't live to be your ideal labels, which no one could, we're all human,
Right.
does that cause an excessive amount of frustration? And it kind of does for
Right.
me,
Yeah.
but not too bad of an extent. You say I'm
Mhm.
on one end of the spectrum. I'm not too much. I think I slightly overdo it, but I'm not always thinking about it. I
Okay.
am able to live
Right.
my life. There are
Yeah.
some people who I think truly live by how they categorize themselves
Yeah. That's weird.
Yeah.
constantly.
That's not a good way to live.
No,
Yeah, and
I
I
don't
would
think
agree
so.
with that.
No, because then you don't. Because then you're just rigid. You're rigid all the time,
Yeah,
and you're
Yeah.
just always constantly thinking, I have to live up to this. Well, what if it's not? What if it's not a good thing? Like,
yeah,
what
And
if
what
it's
if
not a
someone
good?
like says something contradictory to what you think you are?
Yeah, then
Then
you're
mhm.
like, oh, well, actually, I'm this. Well, no, maybe for the
boom,
good of society, no, you're not.
You
boom,
Like
define
maybe this
yourself
paradigm
as
should
shift.
be.
you decide. Okay, an example of over definition and how it could absolutely hurt yourself. You completely define yourself as being an American. America falls. The country no longer exists.
Exactly.
Well, what happens then?
Well,
Like I definitely take a large part of my identity as, oh yeah, I'm an American,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
yeah,
I would be able to live without that, but it
be
would be a
weird.
blow.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
kind of would suck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, no, I think it's super interesting, like what labels make people and like how much that affects it and how much it should. And honestly,
Mhm.
I think there's a great amount of value in just living your life, and I think a lot of people just sometimes negate that part. They get
Yeah.
too in here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. They get too focused on their own opinion of themselves.
yeah. So,
Are we ready to
well, those
rank?
are
I think we
sorry.
killed it. I think
yeah,
we killed
we
it, man.
covered all the top side down and then some.
Yeah, that was
so
cool.
you know, if you guys have any opinions, you know, you have any thoughts that you came up with your mind, your inner monologue, let us know.
No, it was kind of on mute. It was kind of on mute for some reason. Just taking all this crazy stuff in.
Yeah, a little bit same.
Well, and that's what I just like, kind of like conversations that whine and end up in different places, and like, you know, there's some structure to them, but there's a lot of room for freedom. So I'm glad we kind of. We normally are pretty loosey goosey, but this one was really. There are 5 bullet points.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready for the new rankings? At least the voting.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Starting with 3rd.
Yeah. Are we ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. So. Definitely.
Okay. One last yawn in. Okay.
Of course.
Player 3. 3, 2, 1. Dylan.
Okay, Dylan. Yeah.
Okay.
That was a close one for me.
Didn't keep the crown for too darn long. That's for sure.
Next year's though.
That's unfortunate.
Even though last episode I literally said
I'm coming back. I'm coming back. Yeah.
Yeah. You'll be back. Anyways, player 2. Are we ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
John.
Okay.
Okay.
So awkward to raise your hand. Are we in agreement Ryan's player 1 again?
No, we have to vote on it.
Okay. Player 1. 3, 2, 1.
Ryan.
Let's go.
Good job. No, you earned it.
Yeah.
I get the shiny controller back. There's no drift on it.
There's no drift.
I can barely even play now. The controller's so run down.
There's like the buttons are oily.
Gross.
Someone definitely ate popcorn while using it last.
Certainly
that
did.
Or Doritos.
Oh man.
Popcorn and Doritos. Oily and crummy.
Nothing worse.
Yeah.
Man.
Not to mention there's a missing button on the controller.
Yeah, we're playing Nicktoons Unite. I was able to choose Danny. John could choose SpongeBob. You get Jimmy Neutron and Jimmy Turner.
No.
No, anything but that.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, good stuff, guys.
Yeah, great episode.
Hope you all enjoyed.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Bye.
See you.